All righty. Well, we'll start and it'll be what it'll be. That's just the way it goes.
It's the way the cookie crumbles.
So welcome everybody to the Output Habit podcast. I'm on today with my younger brother, Brett, who is a personal trainer at CPAC. Brett, what does CPAC stand for?
College Park Athletic Club.
College Park Athletic Club, located right near Trinity International University, where we both graduated. So it's great to have on some guests. I've been doing a lot of podcasts by myself, but recently have been interviewing some other people who have had influence in my life or have been examples of output themselves. And so I've been doing a lot with health and fitness and wanted to bring Brett on because he also has quite a bit of results in that area. Of course, being a personal trainer, he helps other people with their output as well. So just to start off, so Brett, you ran a 4.54 at the Madison Radicals Combine. That's the ultimate Frisbee team that you've been playing for. How did you get that fast?
Honestly, like a big part of it's just genetics. I was always fast as a kid. I just, even at 4 years old, remember running by people playing soccer. But I think honestly, a big part of it is not necessarily because of like a lot of particular speed training that I did growing up, but just because I was doing so many different sports as a kid, and I was every day outside, playing tag with the kids in the neighborhood, or playing soccer, or playing wiffle ball, or football, hockey, and you were there for a lot of that growing up. Just a lot of sandlot sports growing up. Even though necessarily most of it wasn't organized through club or league, but yeah, it was just every day playing sports all the time. And if you recently I saw a quote by Christian McCaffrey, who's starting running back for the Panthers and considered to be the best running back in the league. He credits a lot of his athleticism from playing 5 sports year round, because the human body just thrives under different circumstances. So not just doing the same and getting different muscles that wouldn't normally be put under duress from one sport by getting in another. So that's honestly what I credit a lot of my athleticism and ultimately my 40-yard time from.
So it's being well-rounded in multiple sports, not just in one.
Yeah, absolutely. Even where I work right now, tennis players don't necessarily reach top speed like ever by playing tennis. I mean, they may quote unquote sprint, but you're never going to reach top speed playing tennis.
Sure.
So I see a lot of kids that just aren't very strong in the lower body. And every time I do see a kid, I'm like, you're pretty athletic. I always ask the same question: what other sport do you play? And there's always an answer, whether it's football or hockey or soccer. Like the most athletic kids at College Park Athletic Club play something else. The kids who just play tennis are never the most athletic kids.
So they're slower on the court than kids that play other sports as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, like tennis is one of those weird sports where like you don't have to be super athletic to really thrive. It's such a technical sport that it doesn't always show itself. I had my boss recently, we were talking about this. He has a background playing soccer and football and training professional athletes. And he's like, if you're not athletic enough in other sports like football or hockey, you get decked and it shows. You take consequences for it. Yeah. In tennis, the worst thing is you just don't get to a ball. So it's like there's no, mano-a-mano, hand-to-hand physical contact repercussions for being an inferior athlete in tennis. And you can get by much further in that kind of a sport than, football or basketball. Like you just aren't keeping up, or you're just getting posterized or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be a good thing and a bad thing for sure. So
as a trainers, it's harder to sell ourselves because it's like, well, we can see that you're not athletic, but you don't always see it because it's harder for you to see it in your game.
Okay.
Versus football players, they'll figure it out real quick.
Gotcha. So when was it? I mean, you said that a lot of your speed was kind of innate and just part of how you grew up. When was it that made you really start training, or what kind of led to that?
Honestly, like I didn't touch a weight room until I got to college. Like as you know, I was the tall, very scrawny kid who could just move. That
Yeah.
was me. Like you could probably look to me and like, oh, that's a cross country runner because how thin I was. But it wasn't until I got to college that I actually had to start training with weights and overload principles of that nature, due to our programs that we had to do for soccer. But even my first year, I still managed to kind of like not do it because I'm like, I look like an idiot because I knew as soon as I stepped in there, I was going to look real dumb, real fast.
Mhm.
But I remember I taking a class. I took one of Dad's classes where I had to document something I wanted to change about myself for the course of a semester, kind of imperative because it's
Yeah.
required of me. So kind of killed two birds with one stone. And so I actually had to start taking in more principles that I would actually have to apply to get to a gym, such as, finding someone to train with, documenting my progress, finding times to do it. And from then onward, it just sort of became a bit easier and more of a routine.
Mhm. What was the name of that class?
That was cognitive behavior.
Okay, cognitive behavior. Our dad is a psychology professor at Trinity, where we both graduated from. So that was so I didn't have to track or log things in a psychology class like that one, but I did take a human performance and wellness with Dr. Voss, and we had to do some similar things. I think we had to track I think maybe it was life planning with Dad that I had to log my time in a week or something like that. But I did have to log things that I ate. I had to log activity with
That was Voss's class.
yeah, yeah.
That was HBW 180.
HPW 180 was definitely the eating and the activity, but I think maybe the time log was in life planning. But
Maybe. I know I did that
was
same
time
thing for
also in
Voss's
Vaughn's
class,
class?
though.
Was that also HPW 180?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I never took life planning with that, but I took HBW 180.
Okay. So, but yeah, I mean that
which stands for Human Performance and Wellness.
human performance and
in
wellness.
case
Yeah.
anyone's wondering.
Exercise science, human performance. But yeah, I mean that's something that I've definitely been finding is that taking the time to document things. I mean, I was my most fit when I was just logging my workouts in Evernote, and just what was my time or what exercise did I do, how many reps, and just by tracking it,
Mhm.
the results get better, which is pretty cool. Now I'm adding the element of documenting and posting things, and that's had its own interesting effects to it as well. But documenting is definitely a huge part of the output habit for sure. So that's cool. What when did you really start to feel like I'm not just getting initiated into this process, but like I'm actually pretty good at this. Like I know what I'm doing when it comes to training and fitness. And how much do you deadlift now?
The PR 1 rep max is 475.
475. Man, oh man. That's pretty crazy. Is that the one that's on Instagram?
Yeah, I mean there's several on Instagram, but that's the most recent one.
Okay. So when was it when you got to not just like, okay, I know what I'm doing in the weight room and I don't have to feel awkward about it anymore, to I am proficient?
Mhm. Yeah, I would definitely have that happened after I started working at College Park. And I got introduced with some of the trainers there, and I got to surround myself with other people who knew what they were doing. I had people I could ask questions to, get critique from. That was definitely kind of where it really started. That was probably just a few years ago, probably 4 years ago, when I like really started to feel more and more proficient, as you said.
Okay.
So I had a lot of more than just one person over the last few years. I would probably say there are good 6 guys that I've been able to run things from, but now it's mostly 3 guys that I talk to now.
Mhm. That's cool. Yeah, so I mean that's really cool to think about those principles that I am always identifying and trying to draw out. And, it started with just needing to get over the awkwardness and not care about what other people think, embrace being a novice, embrace being a beginner, and being okay with that. Um, just forgetting about what other people think, focus on what I want to accomplish, and just focus on my lane and what I need to do. And then going to documenting and tracking my progress, to now getting connected with an association and a group of mentors who can bring you along even further and provide that outside feedback. And so that's just really cool. Just kind of see that process. It's kind of predictable. It's like whatever it is that people get involved in or they want to grow in, like that's kind of the process, it seems, for most people, whether it's training, whether it's music, whether it's learning a language, whatever it is, that's kind of the process. And it doesn't seem like it's that much different for you. So what are some things that you have learned along the way that stand out to you that are valuable?
In terms of what exactly?
So as you trained the body, what are some things that you've learned along the way, like, oh man, that was a really good lesson to learn, and things kind of took off from there, or I wish I would have learned that sooner, it would have maybe allowed me to be more successful sooner, or something along those lines?
Yeah, I would say one thing, like especially when training like a particular athlete who's training for a particular sport, um, is really focusing on the antagonist muscles. So for tennis, it's a predominant forward motion game where you have a lot of arm swinging and a lot of rotation, but a lot of that motion comes from the front of the body. The upper back tends to be incredibly weak in a lot of these kids that we work with. And that just leads to a lot of shoulder injuries because they're so overtrained on one side and so undertrained on the other, that muscular imbalance causes shoulder problems. Sometimes you get elbow problems, and it's just every week there's a kid who comes up like, oh, how do I got this, you got that, and it's like, well, how many times a week do you train? Well, I play tennis 4 times a week. I'm like, okay, that's great. What else are you doing that's not tense? Because your shoulders and your upper back are just dying. And you put these kids on their stomach and tell them to hold a prone T, which, if you don't know what a prone T is, you're on your stomach and then you put your arms straight out to the sides, left and right, and then just pick your arms up off the floor. And your upper back has to maintain that isometric hold. And these kids will be just asking, "Are we done yet?" And it's been 20 seconds. You're doing this for another 40. All right, you got to be doing this more often. And then if you want to make it even harder on them, tell them to put their hands out in a Y shape. So you go 45 degrees up, like the classic YMCA dance. Put the hands out in a Y shape. It gets even harder, and it changes that angle on the joint, and then muscles have to respond differently. And they're just like, "Are we done yet?" I'm like, "No, we're not." And plus, this is only one time. You're doing this 2 more sets of this, by the way. So you better get used to this. But yeah, coming back to your question, like training those antagonistic muscles, because most times we train, we're like, oh, I want to be faster, I want to be stronger, I want to move better, which all great things. But like we also need to train to not get injured, because you can be as fast as you want, but if you can't stay on the field or on the court, it doesn't do you any good.
Gotcha. So is it primarily about antagonist muscles and training those, or is that just one example?
I mean, that's just one of the main examples. I mean, like that's one thing. Like my first couple of years of training as a trainer, I didn't even really consider that much. I was always thinking about, how can I get this kid a stronger posterior chain so they can actually change direction? How can I get this kid to generate more power on their rotation so they can have a stronger forehand? How can I, help this kid lose weight? How, those types of questions. Not necessarily how can I keep this kid's shoulder from constantly being injured, or how can I keep this kid's elbow from constantly getting, injured, those types of chronic overuse injuries that I just see so much because tennis is such a very particular sport.
Yeah. And, very repetitive. I mean, you're doing the same motion multiple times each volley. Whereas you're not always doing that exact repeated motion every single time when you get on a shift for hockey, or you get it, you're running a play for football. I mean, you think about how many times you
exactly.
On a soccer field, how many times are you actually kicking, especially winding up and kicking hard? That's only a fraction of the time that you're swinging a racket on the tennis court.
Yeah, I mean, like if you look at the box score on a professional soccer game, like you look at a 90-minute period of time, if your team takes 21 shots, not even 21 shots on target, that's a decent number of shots. So
that's a lot of shots.
21 divided by your entire team, these kids could do 21 strokes in 1 point.
Yeah.
And that's a high-end point, but still.
Yeah. But I mean, you've got some long balls, some clearances that are also going to be working that.
For sure. I mean, absolutely. But like if you're a striker you're probably not going to do a whole lot of clearances or a whole lot of long balls. You're probably just shooting.
Yeah.
You're never taking that much power. But
yeah, I mean, the number of clearances or long passes for a midfielder or for a defender are probably similar to how many shots a striker is going to take. But the point is, it's not nearly
for
repetitive sure. in those other sports.
Not even close.
That one. I mean, I guess the next closest example would be golf. You're swinging that club pretty much the same way a lot of times in a day.
Yeah, and it's no surprise you see a lot of these golfers end up with back injuries. You do all that rotation all the time. You're not strong enough to withstand it.
Did you drop out there, or did I?
I heard some sort of something. I don't know if you're asking a question or making a comment.
Okay, no, pretty much just a comment. So what is something that you're learning now, either as a coach or as someone who's training themselves still?
Yeah, right now, like most people that I see, I only see once a week. So for me right now, I'm really trying to get proficient in the hour that I have my clients, because if I have, let's say 7 sections to a program and I don't get to my 6th or 7th section, it means I will go a minimum of 2 weeks at best case before I can touch on that again with this client. So I'm trying to get as proficient as I can, trying to get through as much of, if not the entire program, especially given the fact that I'm working with junior tennis players that can range anywhere from, 12 years old, maybe 11 years old to high schooler. And some of them are very social. Some of them are very unmotivated, whatever the case may be. And it's very easy for time to slip away real quickly. That's like, man, we didn't get to this 2 weeks in a row now. Why do I even have this in the program? So trying to master the balance of, making the enjoyable hour in terms of conversation, but also being able to be efficient in our time and actually being able to touch everything well, not just check the box of, okay, we did our squats today, but we actually did our squats today, we actually got to our pull-ups today. And one of the things I like to do with a lot of my clients right now, I like to touch on all 3 planes of movement. So sometimes I'll break those planes up by section, so if I don't even get to my last section where I'll miss an entire plane of movement.
So for those who don't understand planes of movement, what are those 3 planes?
So planes of movement, you have sagittal plane, which is like your front and back, so like your deadlifts, your squats. Then you have your frontal plane, which is usually the one that I don't always get to, which is side to side. So if you're shuffling, and then your transverse, which is kind of up and down, like it's cut off at the hip. So that one's, I don't really touch that plane as much. The frontal plane I'll touch on more, especially with tennis players, because they shuffle so much.
So frontal plane would kind of be like this plane right here, where you're moving side to side in relation to your shoulders.
Yeah. So like you're shuffling or doing skater hops side to side, that kind of thing, or a lateral lunge shift.
What was the first plane you were talking about?
Sagittal. I mean, that's the one that people really live in. Like, yeah. Best way to describe it is, cutting the body left and right. So we actually have a sagittal suture that connects our left and right skull. So anything that happens within that plane is like forward, like walking is in the sagittal plane. Deadlifting would be in that plane. It's the one that people mostly do because it's the one that we just naturally live in as human beings.
So that's moving forward.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other one was what? The third one?
Transverse. That one, it cuts the body from top to bottom. That one's not nearly a plane that I work in as much because sport doesn't really live in that one as much, but it's one of your 3 planes if you want to keep it into your record bank.
So like which plane would backpedaling be in?
Still sagittal.
Okay, so that's forward and backwards.
Yeah, just like the frontal plane is left and right.
Okay, so frontal plane moving this way. Sagittal is moving like this. And then transverse is still kind of the mystery one.
Yeah, that one, I wouldn't bog down people too much with that one right now. That one's really not as, if you watch any Instagrammer, you're probably not going to find them really doing any exercises in that plane.
Okay, so it's not as important.
I wouldn't worry about it too much at this point.
Okay.
People don't even know what the planes are, so
sure. All righty. So as a personal trainer, as a coach, like what would you say like is your strength? Like what do you feel like you're best at adding value to clients in, or in what area?
I mean, I guess you can go a lot of ways with that.
Okay.
I think one of my strengths is that I'm pretty good at connecting with a wide age group. I mean, most of what we do is working with junior tennis players, but we also have adults, and I think I'm pretty good at being able to connect with people who are 30s, 40s, 50s, and then being able to connect with anyone from high school down to like a 12-year-old. So being able to make an enjoyable experience that people can still get something out of for an hour time, I think I'm pretty good at doing that. That's kind of why my goal now is to be able to like, all right, we can make an enjoyable hour, we can have conversation, we can have a connection, but let's also be proficient with our time. So that's kind of why my focus is what it is.
So do you find that motivating kids that don't want to do the things that you give them to do is kind of an issue?
Yeah, that's an issue. I mean, especially in the group classes where they're not necessarily signed up to do a training session, they're just kind of doing a class as a part of their tennis class. Their motivation tends to be the worst out of the lowest motivators that I've seen. Sure. And it's hard to combat. I'm still trying to figure out ways to combat that, because sometimes the kid doesn't want to be there. It's like, how do you motivate someone who doesn't care? I've always said as a coach, the last thing I want to have to instill is motivation, because it's the absolute hardest thing I think for a coach to try to do. Yeah. But it's something that I run into on a weekly basis.
So have you found anything to be effective? I mean, obviously there's going to be a range of effectiveness with different individuals, and not everything's going to be a one size fits all motivator for everybody either, but.
Yeah, I mean, you can try the approach of do you want to get better? Do you want to get, college offers? Do you want to play varsity, high school, whatever? That doesn't tend to work. I mean, you have some kids it might work, with most kids that are like, oh yeah, I want that, and then let's try. No, it's like, oh, it's like, so like, with some kids, like you try like the authority was like, hey, here, you might as well do this. Some kids like, oh yeah, okay, and then most kids will just shut down, and they just won't even respect you anymore. I actually just had a conversation with one of the parents for one of the kids recently, and she's like, yeah, like my daughter doesn't respond well to that kind of, coaching or technique, you could say. She's like,
Mhm.
you have to like try to get them to respect you by saying like, you can do better than this. Your standards are higher than that. And having that kind of belief in them, and for this student in particular, tends to make them garnish more respect towards you, and therefore they'll tend to work a little bit harder.
Okay. Yeah. Have you ever read How to Win Friends and Influence People?
How to move?
How
I have
to
not
Win
read that.
Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Oh, I haven't read that either.
Okay. Yeah, there's a principle in there that he talks about regarding motivating people, and that's giving people a reputation, like giving them a good reputation to live up to. So that's just what that mom said reminded me of that, where you're talking to them as though you're assuming they have higher standards for themselves. So you just assume that they are better than maybe they're acting at the moment. So that's interesting that she's utilizing that with her daughter or son. Maybe you didn't say
Daughter.
that. Okay, daughter. But yeah, that's pretty interesting. Yeah, that might be I hadn't thought about that book for a coach or a personal trainer. And usually people think about it in terms of business, but like an employer situation, employer employee kind of situation. But for a trainer, client, coach, and a team, there's probably some principles in there that work pretty well for that also. So that's pretty interesting. So what the kids that are motivated, what is it that you like to be able to do with them?
With the kids that are motivated, I like to, like, in terms of like the exercises I do with them, or like the techniques that I use with them.
So like once motivation isn't a huge issue, what is it that you kind of then focus on next? So like, okay, I don't have to worry about motivating them. Now I'm free to focus on, what?
Oh, then at that point, I can just focus on making them stronger. I don't have to worry about, giving them hard exercises that they might say, I don't want to do this. It's like, well, you're motivated. You're going to do it. Or at least they have enough respect for me that they're going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes they actually enjoy it more than they think. But, there's certain exercises like box zercher squats that aren't fun, but they're really beneficial at doing a lot of things. So I have a motivated kid. I can, don't have to really worry about taking too much time on technique because they're motivated. The more efficient they are doing stuff, quicker they get the technique, the more I can progress them to doing, more complex exercises.
Okay. So would you say that you are primarily a strength coach?
Yeah, especially with these kids, like strength and conditioning is kind of the moniker we're trying to move towards as an organization, CPAC.
Uh-huh.
We used to use the word performance center, but like that could also have complications with, performance arts centers.
Oh, sure.
And the term fitness is such a broad word. It's like, okay, what does that mean? What are you trying to get? Strength
Mm-hmm.
conditioning. Okay, there's purpose. There's a plan. There's a program. We're moving in a specific direction versus, I play tennis, therefore I'm getting my fitness. Like, no, strength and conditioning is, all right, I'm creating programs. I am putting them through programs with a specific goal I have in mind for them.
Okay. So it's really focused on building the muscular skeletal system to be able to be more efficient and proficient in whatever kind of sport you want to apply it to.
Exactly. Like we're building muscle, we're training energy systems, we're conditioning you to be better in your atmosphere.
Gotcha.
Not just burning calories so I can check something off my app at the end of the day.
Do you run into that a lot?
Not necessarily that part as much. As much the app side, but more so again, like as I mentioned earlier, I played tennis today, therefore I got my fitness in for the day. It's like, no, understanding of the overload principle is non-existent.
So what do you mean by overload principle?
you take a several ounce racket and swing it 1,000 times is not going to give you the same results as putting your body under higher duress in terms of higher weight. So yes, you're sweating and you're moving, you're burning calories, and your heart rate's going to go up, but you're not overloading those muscles at all. That's like cross country runners are conditioned athletes, but they're not overloading their muscles. They are just high repetition, breaking down their muscles and giving themselves a phenomenal cardiovascular system. But in terms of strength, I wouldn't trust them under a whole lot of weight under a bar.
Oh, sure. But I mean, so probably most cross country runners then would probably go like, well, I'm not a power lifter. Like, that's not what I need my body to do for my discipline.
Totally. And their strength and conditioning program would look very different. They would be doing a lot more splits that look like low weight, high reps to help train their body into the muscular endurance side of it, versus, your power lifter is probably not going to touch anything over 12 reps, if even that high.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to go hypertrophy, strength and power, muscular endurance. Hypertrophy is basically their version of muscular endurance. I had a power lifter once said, like, oh, I think I'm getting my cardio in. I'm doing, my heart rate's pretty high of doing, 3x10 squats. I'm like, yeah, your heart rate's going to go up pretty high. But the amount of time it takes you to do that isn't going to get you anywhere near your oxidative energy system. And with your rest being as long as it is, your heart rate's going to drop back down again. That it's never going to ever reach the minimum mark for muscular endurance. So really, you don't do cardio. You just do what you think is cardio.
So just
in case you're wondering, the oxidative energy system, you have to be doing something for like 3 minutes minimum. They'll rest 3 minutes minimum on those kinds of sets sometimes. So they're just never keeping their heart rate elevated long enough to touch that. They're staying in their phosphagen, which is like 9-10 seconds at the top end, maybe even 7 seconds. And then you run into glycolysis, which is where your HIIT workouts tend to thrive in.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So what is maybe an undervalued aspect of fitness that athletes need to pay more attention to?
I would say this one's probably more so for coaches, but athletes tend to do what their coaches tell them.
Sure.
But, training within their energy systems. Like, for example, like the classic, Remember the Titans, Coach Boom is talking about, you do this, you run a mile. You do this, you run a mile. You fumble the football, you run a mile. Running a mile for football players.
For football.
Yeah, like running a mile for football players, arguably a waste of time, because there's not a single play that lasts anywhere near as long as it would take to run a mile. Like, even your classic lateral plays that, maybe go to a minute on the high end, which is, once in a blue moon, is still nowhere near as long as it takes to run a good, let's say, 5-minute mile. Yeah. And if a football player ran a 5-minute mile, I would say, A, that's really impressive. B, how much time did you waste getting to that point?
Yeah. So they're primarily in you said the phosphorus cycle or
phosphagen.
Phosphagen.
Phosphagen energy system.
Energy system. Okay. Which that's
there's an article by an organization called Strong First. Yeah, let me put it this way. So Strong First is a great company or a great organization. They write a lot of articles, and one of them they use to describe kind of your energy system in terms of money. So if you imagine your phosphagen energy system as your cash in your pocket, it's super quick, super accessible, but it runs out really, really quickly.
Because you can only fit so much cash.
And then you run into your glycolysis energy system. Yeah, you only have so much cash in your pocket. Like, most people don't walk around with $1,000 in their pocket in terms of cash. Like, it's just
right.
You usually see someone between maybe like $50 and $100, maybe a couple $100, whatever.
Sure.
Point is, it runs out really quickly, but it's super liquid. It's super quick. You can use it anywhere. And your glycolysis is like your credit card system. It's pretty quick. It's not super sustainable because you run into a lot of debt. And then your oxidative, which is like your money tree. It's not very fast, but it's very long lasting. So football thrives in the phosphagen and glycolysis stage between how long they work, the rest they get. It's pretty much exclusively those two energy systems.
Which is why
as a player or a coach, like, what'd you say?
Which is why you only play once a week.
Oh, I mean, you also play once a week just because you get so dang beat up. Like you're taking so many shots. Like,
yeah, that too.
I remember Reggie Bush once came on after he was on a Fox show after he retired, and he's like, "Man, people don't understand how hard some of those hits are. Like they don't look bad on TV, but like there are days like I would have to my wife would have to help me out of bed the day after a game just because I took so many hits." So it's like it's just a brutally physical contact sport where you are literally getting in contact with somebody at a high velocity every play, except for hopefully your quarterback. Hopefully he's not taking too many shots.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really only the.
But back to the point that I would. Back to the point about like how to train. What'd you say?
I think there's a delay. Like I'm starting to say something, you're starting to say something, and we're not quite. But anyway, I was just saying that it's probably just the adrenaline and the testosterone is what keeps them playing, for the duration of the game.
Oh yeah.
Without too much.
Well, I mean, it totally. I'm on week 6 of what's suspected a partially what's called a slap tear in my labrum. But the day that it happened, I was able to finish out my tournament without really any problems. It wasn't until the 6-hour car drive home afterwards when I didn't move my arm for that entire time. I was like, oh gosh, that doesn't feel good at all.
Yeah.
But during the tournament, I was able to still throw throws that I don't even dare try throw right now.
Yeah. But I'm sorry, you were saying.
Yeah. So like in terms of like, the quote unquote repercussions for coaches when their kids don't do what they want. Like I see this at the club all the time where, all right, kids need to move their feet for tennis. It's very important. And they get flat-footed. All right, 10 push-ups. Like, why are you making these kids do push-ups? These kids lack the core strength to even do a push-up. Not to mention you're training the same muscles that they are using all the time.
And make them do pull-ups instead.
Or prone T-raise or something. Like, don't make these kids do push-ups all the time because it's just not an efficient use. Like, it's just a waste of time. Like, first off, the reps are like quarter reps, maybe half at best.
Because their push-up form is so terrible.
It's atrocious. It's horrible. If you were to ask a kid, a good measurement sometimes is like, all right, put your fist or something equivalent to your fist on the floor. All right, chest has to touch that fist. If they were to go that low, they wouldn't get back up. There was a kid at CPAC. He would train with one of our trainers, and after the first days, Dad was like, "Why can't my son do 100 push-ups yet?" It's like, okay, your kid can't even do 1 on the first day. He ain't gonna do 100. All right, that's not happening. He's like, well, when's he gonna be able to do 100 push-ups? Yeah, it's like, and my colleague replied to him. He's like, well, with his work ethic, probably never. It's just man. But it's also like, why do you have this value of 100 push-ups for your kid? Like, I don't like. It's
like what is
really
that going to do for him or you if he can do 100 push-ups?
It's like, how does that make him a better tennis player? Like, yes, you need some chest strength to balance out, but like 100 push-ups consecutively is really good. Like, let's just get this kid to do 1. It's not like. I finally reached it just like a year or 2 ago, and that was hard.
Yeah. I mean, like there's like technique to it. Like you can't go too fast, you can't go too slow. Like
you gotta work on your breathing, you gotta maintain core tension, and you just have to train the muscular endurance aspect of it. That most people aren't going to do.
Yeah, I mean, it just takes a lot of time.
But let me say, when you're in quarantine and you don't have a gym accessible, you find new ways to do exercises.
And there you go.
So for
Innovation
me, it
is
was a lot
born
of
out of
push-ups
adversity.
and deck pull-ups. What
Yeah,
was that?
innovation is born out of adversity.
That's right.
So in somebody like my situation, where I'm doing obstacle course races and I'm using a bunch of those different energy systems you were talking about, where, if there's a really, really grip intensive obstacle, I'm trying to get through that sucker in 8 to 10 seconds so that I'm not going through that phosphagen cycle too far. And so the cash will be able to build up before I get to the next one. What's an effective way to train because I'm definitely an oxidative most of the time, especially.
Oh yeah, you're oxidative pretty much all the time because you're running the entire time, so your heart rate is constantly up.
Right. But then I'm going to be doing things that are going to, like, if I don't get through an obstacle in 8 to 10 seconds, I'm going to be burning out or pumping out, my forearms and my biceps because of, the energy system requirements of a grip intensive obstacle.
Mm-hmm.
So just the training to be able to move in between those energy systems, like, is there any kind of, are there certain things that will help with that to be able to train multiple energy systems efficiently?
I mean, yeah, one of the things that you're in that kind of situation, what you have to learn to do is that you have to learn how to produce power out of a fatigue state. So, I went through a program last year where there was a lot of that, where I would go from, doing all kinds of just crazy barbell complex. And out of that, I would have to grab a plate and start doing lateral skater hops, which if you don't know what that is, you're holding like a 45 or 25 pound plate in your hands, and you jump off your right foot to your left foot as far as you can and land on the opposite foot. And so you just did all these exercises with a barbell where you're doing, cleans or presses, and you're doing all this stuff that's going to elevate your heart rate and produce a lot of fatigue. And now you're going into power movements such as a lateral bound or a skater hop, and you're training your body to be able to produce power out of that fatigue state. And it's not pleasant, but that's the kind of stuff that you got to learn how to do. So you want to simulate what you would have to do in an obstacle race. You have to simulate a lot of things, because what you're going to want to do is elevate your heart rate, and then go through exercises that are going to be similar to what you're going to want to be doing on an obstacle course. So you may not necessarily have the time to run 20 minutes and then do something. You can do something else that's going to, elevate that heart rate much faster, like a kettlebell swing or, some squats, something that's going to get that heart rate elevated to a pretty high number. And then, like, all right, before you rest, you got to go straight into this power movement and start producing power.
Okay. Gotcha.
So for you, like, that could be like, do a circuit of kettlebell swings, get that heart rate elevated, and then go to your magical little gizmos that dangle from your ceiling downstairs and start crawling up there, for like 8 to 10 seconds.
So try to do something to get the heart rate up before I would jump onto those ninja holds. Yeah.
Or if you want to get really specific, you want to use the same muscles that you're going to produce power with. Because what you're going to want to do is you want to learn how to really produce power out of a lactic acid state. So you produce a lot of lactic acid into your muscles by using them. And now I ask those same muscle groups to produce power. So, like, maybe a nice way to start out would be to, like, all right, let's do, kettlebell swings. All right, now let's go do your little grip test. The kettlebell swing is predominantly a posterior chain, glute, hamstrings movement. So the lactic acid is not going to your forearms.
Kettlebell too.
You do have to hold on to it, but you're not really going to fatigue your forearms as much. But the kettlebell, if you do a swing right, should feel light as a feather in your hands, because you're maintaining tension in your upper back and in your core and your legs. And so really that kettlebell should feel incredibly light in your arms. So if
Okay.
you went to go to do your monkey bars, as I'll call them, because I don't really know what to phrase, what the heck those are that you have downstairs, which are so grip dominant heavy, that's predominantly your forearm that's going to fry. You're really producing the lactic acid in your forearms. So what you could do, and I found this exercise recently, this thing kills the forearms, is if you have like a PVC pipe or something and a band, and strap that band to a kettlebell, hold it straight out, and then twist the kettlebell all the way up to the top, and then slowly release it down. Your forearms will be on fire.
You're rolling it up, right? And then rolling it back down.
After just one rotation of that. Yeah, your balance, it stretches the band out. It takes way longer than you think that it should. It's like, oh, this band is, 3-4 feet long. All right, I'll have to roll 3 feet up. Well, then the band stretches to like an extra foot. So now you have to really stroke more than you thought. It's like, oh man. It's like this kettlebell feel like it hasn't gone up any higher in the last like 3 rotations of this PVC pipe. What the heck?
So you use a stretchy band instead of a rope on purpose?
Well, I use bands because that's what I have.
Okay.
But you could do it with a rope.
Okay. So are you saying
but
like
the band, I think I like the band also a little bit more because it has that bounce to it. It takes a little bit more control. The rope's a more stable surface. It's not going to wiggle and change as much. So your forearms don't necessarily have to do as much.
Yeah.
Because the idea is you're doing this at a 90-degree angle with your forearms, which I tell you what, just again, one set of that, and you're like, I don't want to do this again.
Wait, what do you mean by a 90-degree angle?
So you hold your arms straight out. So your armpit's a 90-degree angle.
Oh, okay. Okay. I thought like my forearms at 90 degrees. Like, are you like bending your biceps?
No. No. Yeah, hold that sucker straight out and try to maintain that parallel level because you're going to want to sit down to closer to 78 or 80 degrees.
Okay.
Because it's just way more comfortable than 90.
So you roll it up and then you roll it back down?
Yeah, the trick is when you roll it down is that because it's going to want to fly out because gravity is now with you.
Right.
You have to control it, not just let it just unwind.
For sure. So last question.
Let's go.
What is one of the most important habits that you try to do every day or on a regular basis because of it gives you the most bang for your buck in any area of life?
Yeah, so you've already mentioned this earlier, but for me, like I write all my programs down and I got a notebook, and in that notebook I try to write down everything that I want to keep on record. So like I'm probably weird like this, but what I'll do is I'll probably do this pretty soon is that I set my notebook up for the entire year at the beginning of the year as much as I can. Okay. So I try to write out a space for every day that I'm going to potentially work out. I write a space for every Sunday for sermons. I write a space out for every day for devotions. I write down space for every month for income and expenses. And then I leave lots of stuff blank for just thoughts, prayers, processes, things of that nature. So I always have a space to put something down. Because people always say, "Oh, write it down." Like the probability of your goal coming true after writing it down goes up exponentially. Yeah. But writing it down on a piece of paper and throwing it away isn't really what that refers to. But having a notebook I can always refer to, and it's like, okay, when was the last time I worked out? Oh snap, I thought it was just a couple of days. It's actually been like 4 days. Or when's the last time I did a devotion? It's like, oh shoot, it's been more days than I thought, because when you don't write things down, it shows itself. Because when you do write it down, it also shows itself. Yeah. And that ambiguity that we tend to have of, oh, it hasn't been that long. No, I know exactly how long it's been. Yeah. So that's something I've been doing in September 2019. So this year I had like maybe a year, had a notebook for just 1 year. And I'm gonna probably do it again next year because I really enjoy it, because there's lots of.
Oh no, look like we lost you completely. Now you're muted.
I disappeared.
You went away, but now you're back.
I can't hear you anymore.
Oh no, you can't hear me? How about now?
Anyway, hey, I can hear you again.
Oh, you can hear me now? All right. Anyway,
Happens.
so you were saying that you started in September 2019?
Yeah, I started in September 2019. And like I was always been the kind of guy. I'm like, what if I run out of room in my notebook? What am I gonna do then? It's like, what if I just create a space for everything that I could potentially need? Well, that's time consuming, but okay, I'll do it. So I did most of that when I was flying out to see Toby, our sister, over January, which is also right at the beginning of the year. So I'm like, oh, I have 2, 3, 4 flights to play with where I can just, start writing stuff down and creating my space and using the calendar on my phone to find out, how many days I'm going to need for this and whatnot. And so if you were to open it up, you'd see lots of blank spaces from November through December.
Okay.
And probably a few too many blank spaces from January to November as well.
From January to November?
Days that I didn't do what I would want to do, so it's blank.
Okay, gotcha. But yeah, I know what you mean with that ambiguity. It does seem like in our own minds we tend to bend that ambiguity to in our favor and make it look to ourselves like it's not as bad as things actually are, or look like they're better than they actually are. Having that objective feedback is really valuable because we have a tendency to deceive ourselves.
I believe a great tool that Dad would talked about in some of his psychology classes is the Johari window. Do you remember that? What that is?
No.
It's a 2x2 grid, and it's simply what you know, what others know, and then what you know and what others don't, or what you don't know and what others don't know.
Okay.
So you divide them up. So there's things that you know and what others both know about you. So,
so these are all things that are known or are true about you.
Yes, it's all about this. So in this case, it is all about
what I know about me, what others know about me, what I don't know about me, and what others don't know about me. Yeah,
so that's that blank space about yourself that really the unknown. And then there's the one, this is where it kind of really comes more into play, is what you don't know, but what others do know about you. That's where we might have the ambiguity, like, I'm not that arrogant. Oh, it's not that bad. Oh, I'm not that obnoxious. And they're like, yeah, you are.
You maybe don't know it, but other people do.
You're the only one who doesn't know just how annoying you really are.
Yeah. That's why I say don't be that guy. Guy that doesn't know and everybody else does know.
Yes. There's multiple times at work where I've wanted to, and sometimes I've actually said it to kids. It's like, why are you the way you are? It's just like, why must you be so this? There's a quote from one of my old associate head coaches in college, and it's my favorite, one of my favorite quotes ever. And it says, "Can you do something else somewhere else?" Like sometimes what I want to say to these kids, like, can you just do something else away from me? Like, I just can't deal with this anymore.
Sometimes that's the thought with our kids at times.
Oh, I tell the story.
Sometimes I say something along those lines to them at times, like usually I don't say something else, but like, can you go do that somewhere else?
I talk about you every now and then at work, and I'm like, yeah, he's got 5 kids. And they're like, what? I was like, yeah, man, and he's younger than you.
We were in Walmart today, and we were kind of walking across the path of some lady pushing her cart. She was wearing a mask, so I couldn't see most of her face, but I saw her eyes.
You see her eyes, though.
They got big when she realized, those are all with the same parents. It was priceless.
I just have this picture of you like turning the corner, and there's Caleb turns the corner with you, and Gabe turns the corner, and Chloe comes. It's like, how many kids are coming around this corner?
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun though. Well, last word. Is there anything you would like to share with anyone who is interested in just getting better from a fitness standpoint, or is really trying to get better? Anything you want to leave people with?
First thing is, like, earlier I was totally blanked on like an exercise in the transverse plane. I was like, gosh dang it, I can't remember a single one. So transverse plane is simply like any rotational exercise, like a med ball hip toss, something like that.
Okay. So
That's your
instead of
transverse
going like
plane.
this or like this, we're going like this.
Yeah, you're going like that. So
Okay.
like that's one plane that I actually do use quite a bit with these kids, because tennis is such a
Oh
rotational
yeah.
sport.
Yeah.
They oftentimes
Throwing,
will,
golf.
yeah, it's like, and it's like learning to create the power in the correct way. So like, do they use their arm, or are they using their core and their legs?
Yeah.
So teaching the kids, like, all right, we have to, use your legs to your core to your arms, versus you just whip your elbow, and that's why you have a tennis elbow. So,
Yeah.
but that's the first thing. And then the last thing I would say is like this, like probably 3 or 4 things. Like if anyone is trying to create their New Year's resolutions in November, because why wait to an arbitrary day and time of the year to start changing your life?
Yeah.
Like as we mentioned, like writing things down, I'd say is like one of the biggest things to have. Is like, all right, how many times you worked out in the month of November. You know what you did in the month of November. So when you come back the next week, you know how to progress. It's like, oh man, that felt really good today. Oh snap, I lifted more last week. Okay, maybe I should have done more, or whatever the case may be. Having that information and taking it with you to when you work out, very, very important. So that's the first thing. Second thing is having a time when you're going to train the day before, because people always say, I don't have time. I was like, you do. You just, no one has time, because it's going to get filled and spent whether you want to or not, in some potentially meaningless, maybe meaningful way. I mean, I remember multiple times I would clean my room thoroughly instead of doing my homework, because I didn't want to do it. But I spent my time productively, just not in the way I should have. So picking a time to do it the day before. So the day before I work out, I always know, like almost to the hour, or like after this session or before this session, I have to train, because I don't have time after that. If I get to 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I ain't going to work out after that. It's not going to happen. So if I don't get my workout in before then, I'm done, because I know full well when I get done work at 9 o'clock at night, I'm not going to want to train after working 4 or 5 hours in a row with clients. Like I want to go home, and I will go home. Even if I say I'm going to work out, I'm not going to. So finding that time before is huge. And then I would say the last thing is, especially for people who are newer, but even if you're experienced, is having somebody that you talk to about training or work out with. So that way they can be like, yo, how's your workouts going? I haven't worked out in 2 weeks. Dang, that sounded way better in my head until I told you in person. So there's a story about a guy who wanted to drink water more often, and I wish I was talking about myself, but I'm not. And he would get phone calls from his accountability person, and before he'd answer that phone, he would chug water. So when he asked him if he drank the water that day, he could say yes, because he didn't want to have to tell him, no, I haven't drinking as much as I'm supposed to today. So he would literally, while that phone's ringing, down 20 ounces of water. So, and he could honestly say, yeah, I drank the water that I needed to today. But if he didn't have that person calling him, he was never going to drink that 20 ounces of water. Mm-hmm. So I would say those are like the 3 biggest things that you should have going into a program. And then I'd say the last thing is just have a program ready before, because if you just go into the gym like, what am I going to do today? I picked my time. All right, let's go do some curls, and let's go on the treadmill for 20 minutes. Okay, that's I worked up a good sweat. I'm gonna go home now. Like, even if it's not a great program, like if you can build the habit of doing all those other things, but you at least are starting something, then you can, get better and get more research, and then you can laugh at yourself a year later, like, oh man, what was I doing for the first 2 months of my program? I was doing that. What an idiot. And that's fine. I mean, the body is just waiting to to gain adaptations, but it won't happen if you don't start.
Yeah.
So like there's plenty of free programs that you can look up on like Stack or whatever. It's like, oh, just literally all you have to do is Google programs for whatever goal you have. And you can find at least some kind of basic free program that's going to at least get you started.
Yeah.
And then maybe you can get smarter and better and talk to smarter people along the way. But like, don't let your uneducated self be the reason that you don't start. Oh, I don't know how to do this, so I'm not going to start. If I had $1 every time I had a kid say that, I would be able to retire right now. Oh, I'm not very good at this. Yeah, that's why we're doing it. That's the point. If you were good at it, we wouldn't be doing it. That's a little bit of an overstatement, but with these kids, it's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
It's like, why do we have to work hard to do these prone tees? These are so hard. I'm like, yeah, they are. Because you're weak there. Oh, why do we have to work our backhand? Because you have none. You don't have a backhand. You only ever do forehands. It's like, if it's hard, it's probably a good reason to do it. Take that with a grain of salt. There's some hard, stupid exercises out there that are just for flashy show. But the principle of like, if this simple, basic movement pattern is hard, it's probably because it's incredibly underdeveloped and you should be doing it.
Yeah. So just to sum that all up is, write it down, have a plan where you're going to know when you're going to do it. You're going to have a program of what you're going to do, and accountability, and just start.
Just start.
Good stuff.
Just start. Toby had a quote, who's my sister, and she said, I don't know if it's her. I got it from her, but she definitely got it from somewhere else. You know, a year from now, you're going to wish you started today.
Yeah, definitely. For sure. Well, thanks, Brett. Where can people follow you at?
They can follow me on my Instagram account, Son of Psychology, all one word.
Don't forget the P.
Okay, don't forget the P. You know, if sometimes it gets abbreviated, if you do follow me and someone says, it says Son of Psycho, I'm like, oh, great. Not quite what I was going for. But I still like the slogan Son of Psychology. I don't post a whole lot on there, but you can also find stuff. We're hopefully going to have a more active social media. You can go to College Park. We're going to hopefully start a new Instagram page where we're going to be putting a lot of valuable content. So it won't just be me, but my colleagues who are also very, very good at what they do. Nice. And that will hopefully be a very useful resource for people in terms of looking to constantly grow in the field of strength and conditioning.
Very cool. Yeah, that sounds like a pretty valuable resource for people to check out. Is that just going to be at CPAC or at College Park or College Park Athletic Club?
Our current one right now is like CPAC Performance Center, but like I told you before, we're trying to move from that moniker Performance Center because it's got too many ties to too many other things. It's too broad. So it's probably going to be something like CPAC Strength and Conditioning or something along those lines. But hopefully that page will be up soon. Okay. All right. Well, let me know when it is, and I'll post it somewhere or talk about it, make a post or two about it so people can check it out. Totally. All right. Well, thanks for coming on, Brett. Sorry we had some connection issues, but some really good stuff. And it sounded like you were taking the words out of my mouth at times, but that's just because these principles are universal. They're out there for anybody to pick up and use them. So thanks, Brett. Thanks for coming on, and we'll see you at Thanksgiving. Oh, totally. All right. Thanks for being here. Bye. Bye.